Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Elisabeth Kübler-Ross Foundation's last community conversation of 2025, which I don't quite know how we got to 2025, and that is close to the end of December when I just am remembering January happened like 2 days ago. So I don't know how many of you are having that kind of a year, but welcome to all of you. And I would like to ask, just to begin, before I introduce myself and our wonderful speaker this morning, if people could post in the chat where it is that they are Zooming in from. And if you've been here before for an Elisabeth Kübler-Ross event, or if you've seen Gabby before, it's something. Thank you, Durango, California in the house, Las Vegas. This is one of the most fun parts as we see people coming in from all over the country and often Canada, other countries, and just welcome, Joy. Welcome to all of you, and just how important these kind of conversations are, despite the ongoing sort of mantra that people in this country don't want to hear about these topics, don't want to talk about death, dying, loss, grief, illness. That in fact, given the opportunity and a space where this is accessible, that people in fact are very interested in these conversations. So, on behalf of the Elisabeth Kübler-Ross Foundation, I'd like to just welcome all of you. My name is Susan Barber, and for the last 4 years, I've had the incredible privilege of being able to curate a series of conversations, author talks, and on occasion movies for people to come and hear about topics ranging from death, dying, loss, and grief, healing, and a variety of other things that we navigate throughout our lives. But mostly people spend a lot of time paying attention to this towards the end of their life. So our goal here is to have this conversation be part of a conversation that people have from birth, and also for people to have opportunities to have these conversations with other people. And I know that Gabby can attest to this, and from her own work, and that I've seen this happen here through the Elisabeth Kübler-Ross Foundation, that we have had many opportunities for people coming to these kind of meetings to actually befriend each other and have conversations offline and with them, outside of this. And that is building the kind of community that we really hope for. For many of you, most people are really familiar with Elisabeth Kübler-Ross as the death and dying lady, and in 1969, the publication of On Death and Dying, which is something that I remember quite well because I was working in a grocery store and a library at 11 years old, volunteering, and that book showed up in both places. And in the library, I stole it to read under the covers with a flashlight for a day. And in the grocery store, the manager thought it was such a horrible topic to have out in public that he turned all of the Time magazines with Elizabeth's article on the front and made sure that nobody had to see that while they were purchasing their groceries. So we've come a long way. Elizabeth, as much as she spent time talking to people who were ill and talking to people who were dying, she believed that people lived until their last breath and that they should be supported well, both spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and socially, and especially physically, until their last breath. Elizabeth was as much the life and living lady. No opportunity went unexperienced. I believe Elizabeth died with very few regrets. And I had the opportunity to meet her in 1998 after she had had a number of strokes, and it was one of the most incredible afternoons of my life. So the foundation is a continuation of her work. It's led by her son, Ken Ross, who is in Switzerland at the moment, where his mom was born and went to medical school in the 1940s. So with that, and I just want to thank all of you for joining us. There's been a number of people who are in a position to make donations, and I really am grateful to you for that. And I was ahead of the times. Yes, I had to hide that under the covers because my parents would have killed me. But I want to thank you. We try to offer these conversations and these events at no cost, so the largest number of people possible can attend. And that is made it possible by the donations of people who attend these. So thank you all so much. And without too much more of my talking, I want to just take a moment to introduce our topic today and our incredible speaker. Gabby Jimenez is somebody that I have known for about maybe a little bit more than 10 years now. I met her when she came to work at Mission Hospice. She was taking a nursing sort of placement during her nursing school journey. And immediately upon meeting Gabby, I thought this is a person who was born to do this work. Gabby, since that time, has become a nationally and internationally known hospice and palliative care educator and an end-of-life doula. She speaks about death, dying, loss, and grief as often as she can. She has published, Gabby, how many now? 8
10.
books? 10 books, and you have another one that you may or may not mention today that is not for public consumption yet. And Gabby's goal has been and continues to be to help improve the way people are cared for when they're ill, when they're dying, and when they're grieving. Gabby has a beautiful community on Facebook, the Hospice Heart that she began in 2019, and she has almost 170,000 followers there. And she writes blogs very often about the journey she is on, and all of that information will be sent to you along with a recording of this event as soon as Ken returns from his trip through Europe, and we are able to have him posted up on the YouTube page, and I'll be able to send a link hopefully at the beginning of January. So you'll get that hopefully through an Eventbrite email or from my own email. So with that, I just welcome you all. Feel free to post wherever it is that you're Zooming in from, and to please, I'm going to ask also if there's a question or something specific that that brought people to this meeting, to feel free to post it. And when Gabby and I complete our conversation, we're going to open up the room for people to ask questions, either by using the Zoom hand raising, which should be at the bottom of your screen with a little icon that looks like this, or I can just read the question that you've posted here. And feel free to post that throughout this conversation as things like sort of come to you. If you're like me, you'll have a wonderful question, and 5 minutes later, you'll have no idea what it was. So feel free to post that as we move through the conversation. So Gabby, I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and I'm just so grateful. This has been a long 55 days for you, and we're going to get down into this conversation. But I'm just so grateful that you're here this morning. And I just also want to say that many of us come to this work because of a dear one, a beloved who has died. And I just realized, looking at the date, that today is the 35th anniversary of my brother from another mother, my first roommate in San Francisco, Charlie McLean, who died a death that was very undersupported. He died of AIDS in 1993. And he was just such a beautiful soul. And I feel like there's nowhere he's not now. Um, he came to a workshop we did with about 1,000 people for Stephen and Andrea Levine back in the day. And he looked around the room, and he was the only Black person there. And he was like, this is a great conversation, but thank you for inviting me. He just was a remarkable guy. Funny, 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 loving and kind. And today is the 35th anniversary of him leaving the planet. And he did not live 35 years, which breaks my heart. So for all of you who have someone that is missing today, we just want to hold them in this circle, and they are never far from us. So Gabby, thank you so much for being here. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I had, you'll hear the whole story, but on Friday I had surgery, the second surgery in this 55-day ordeal, and they had to put a breathing tube in my throat. And so my throat is very scratchy. So forgive me if I have to clear my throat or cough periodically. My name is Gabby. I'm a hospice and palliative care nurse and an end-of-life doula. I was not destined to be a nurse. No one in my family is in healthcare. This wasn't a plan of mine since birth. In fact, it sort of came out of nowhere and unexpectedly after caring for a friend of mine who was dying. I was caring for him so his wife could work, and I didn't know anything about healthcare or end of life or any of that. And I stayed at his bedside. I helped support him as I watched him decline, which was a new experience for me. Prior to this, I had had people die in my life, both my parents and a sister, but I didn't have any experience. I do believe that had I known then what I know now, I would have been able to support those people in a different way, especially my parents and my sister. But I didn't. I didn't know the what it meant to be with someone who was dying. I didn't know how to care for them. But when I cared for John, it spurred something inside of me and it made me think that maybe I'm supposed to do this work. And I was in my 40s at the time. So this was not something that I was going to start, in my teens or early adulthood. I had already had a pretty full life. So I changed my whole life and I went to nursing school to become a hospice nurse. And I have now been with maybe 2,500 people at the end of their life, witnessing nearly 2,000 last breaths. I have witnessed a lot of death, and it has made me a better person. I'm certainly more appreciative of life and the meaning of life and all that we are gifted in this life. It's also reminded me how fragile we are. It's had me questioning my own mortality. And I I think I live a better life because of what I've experienced, maybe a fuller life. I've learned to let things go because I don't want to take them with me. So life has changed for me. And up until this point, when all of this took place, which I will share shortly, um, I don't think I thought I was invincible. I knew that I would die too. We're all going to die. That's just part of life. But I was definitely taken by surprise. And I am seeing life through a different lens, but also nursing and doula care, any end of life care, as a caregiver, as a clinician, I will do it differently because of this experience. So thank you, Susan, for having me here today. And thank you all of you for being here.
Gabby and I have been talking about this for maybe not 55 days, but probably for about 40 days about this. And I'm going to ask Gabby, she alluded to this a little bit earlier, just to talk to us about what happened for the 2,000 people, Gabby, that you have cared for. The name of this community conversation is The Other Side of the Bed. And this is really a story about what it's like for somebody who has witnessed so many people managing their illness, supporting their care, supporting their families to better manage the person's illness, to help people come to the point where they're able to say goodbye in a wholesome way, and to support people long after their beloved dies. And um, this has really shifted fairly dramatically in the last month and a half, Gabby. And I'm wondering if you could talk to us just a little bit about what's happened to you and where you found yourself most recently.
Okay. On October, gosh, I feel a little emotional
Yeah.
because this has been an emotional experience. And you try to be strong and brave and you try to give everyone this impression like, look, I can do this and I'm going to be okay because I knew I was going to be okay. But I would be lying if I said that there wasn't some underlying fear that I wouldn't. So on October 28th, I went into work. I'm a nurse. I was on the floor. I, in retrospect, I now remember this. I had a kind of a little bit of a headache and some backache, which most nurses have. I was tired, which most nurses are. None of this seemed out of place for me. And in fact, that particular night, I was kind of supervising, for lack of a better word, a new nurse. So I wasn't really working on the floor. I was just watching him and being there to support him if he needed. He's a great nurse. He was doing a great job. So I just got to hang out with the kids and hang out with the parents. And I was actually more relaxed. But I do remember that I kept propping myself up on the couch with chairs because my back was hurting, my lower back specifically. The next morning, I woke up like I always do, rested. I felt pretty good, actually. I did not feel sick. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with me. That morning, I did quite a bit. I did a podcast interview. I took a class online. I did a couple other things. I did some stuff for work. I was very busy. And then at 2 o'clock, I had a Zoom meeting. And I got on the Zoom meeting, and as I was sitting there, I started to feel kind of lightheaded, I guess, and maybe even a little bit warm. Like I just wasn't feeling so great. So I told the group that I was going to take my video off because I wasn't feeling so great. And then as I was sitting there behind the video watching the meeting, I started feeling worse and nauseous, and it came on really quickly. I went back on the video. I told them that I was going to leave the meeting because I wasn't feeling so great. And I got off the meeting. I went into the bathroom. I threw up 3 times, and then I got really cold. So cold that I was putting on mittens and a hat and wrapping myself in gloves, and my teeth were chattering so much that I thought they were going to break. So I put a washcloth in my mouth to protect my teeth. And I was shivering. I was shivering so hard, and I'm lying under these blankets and I couldn't get warm. And then it switched. Then I felt pain start at the top of my head, go down to my neck, my shoulders, down my spine, into both sides of my kidney areas, down to the base of my spine, into my coccyx, and into my bottom. I felt the pain literally radiate as though someone was pouring pain from the top of my head down through my body. I felt every moment of that pain as it expanded through my body. And then I got hot. And then I couldn't stand up and I couldn't sit down and I couldn't get comfortable. And I kept trying to find a position. I went to my bed. I put on my heating pad. I got on my couch. I was trying to walk around. I couldn't get comfortable. My whole body was so hot and in so much pain. Did I call for help? No. What did I do? I told myself that I could get right through it, right? It's just going to take a little time. I'll just get through it. Maybe it's a cold. Maybe I'm just not feeling well. I sat like that for 4 hours when I finally realized that I wasn't getting better. I called 911. The fire department came. I had a temperature of 103.4. They called the ER and said, "We're bringing her in right now. You need to see her as soon as she gets in." I got there. The pain was really bad. I was definitely warm, but I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was taking their time, right? Like I'm gonna be fine. I'm so sorry. And they just kept looking at me like I was like, what is wrong with you? You're not well. And we did the blood tests, we did all the scans, all the tests and stuff, and it turned out that I had at this time a kidney infection that had gotten into my blood. And at this time, they weren't sure what it was, and they were giving me medications. They were giving me morphine and something else for the pain, and they were giving me something for the fever. And then, of course, the stuff for the pain was making me nauseous, so they were giving me something, right? This sort of vicious cycle. And at this time, I was doing pretty good. And then around 2 a.m., the pain and the fever. Keep in mind, I'm a little confused about time frames. So my whole confusion set in during this time. So around 2 a.m., they said, "Okay, well, your fever has broke and your pain is reduced. You can go home now." And I said, "It's 2 in the morning. I'm not going home." And they said, "Oh, okay, well, you can sleep if you want." So I slept until about 5:30. I woke up, still not feeling right and definitely confused and not able to do things. Like I asked for a straw for my water, and I reached for the straw and I couldn't take the paper off, and I couldn't use my fingers. It was a really weird experience. So they said, "Okay, well, your fever's gone. We put you on an antibiotic. You'll take this antibiotic for a few days. Call us if it gets worse." So they gave me my discharge papers, and I walked out of the hospital. No one asked me how I was going to get home. No one asked me if I had a ride. I walked outside in my pajamas and my slippers. There was about 7 police officers outside. They said good morning. It was still dark out. I walked to the right about 20 or 30 feet, realizing I was going the wrong way. I live very close to the hospital. I turned around to walk the other way, walked right past the police officers. They said good morning again, didn't ask me if I was okay. And I walked home. And I felt it was like an out of body experience. I felt like I was doing the motions, but it wasn't me doing it. Like I just kept saying, "Just get home, just get home, just get home." I got home, got on my couch. My son came over and I wasn't feeling good. And I kept telling him, "I think we need to go back to the hospital." The hospital called and said, "You need to come back here. You have a very serious bacterial infection and you could be septic. You need to come home now." excuse me, come back to the hospital now. So my son drove me to the hospital, got back in. They tried two different antibiotics at this time, both of which were not working for the culture was resistant to those antibiotics. They finally found another one that seemed to be working. I was in the hospital for a few days. I was septic. So for 3 weeks, I went through this septic experience. And I'll give you the short version, but I lost my taste for food and my interest in food. Like I wasn't hungry. Um, and at this time, they just wanted me to try to stay hydrated and take this new antibiotic, but I was really uncomfortable and I was kind of struggling. I'd lost 12 pounds in 6 or 7 days. I mean, my whole body wasn't working, and a lot happened in that time. Very confused, just not feeling myself. And then I started feeling a little bit better. And I was actually going to go into work. I got ready for work that day. I was still weak, but I just thought I was getting over the sepsis. You know, sepsis is an interesting thing. Oh, I will tell you, and I need to back up because this is the most important part. When I got back to the hospital, when my son brought me back to the hospital, I looked at the doctor and I said, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry for all this trouble. You know, maybe I shouldn't have left. I'm sorry that, I'm here. And he looked at me and he said, Gabby, if you hadn't called 911, you would have died. And I heard those words. This is after I had gone home and come back. So on that day that I waited 4 hours to call 911, I could have died in that period of time. If I hadn't called 911 and they hadn't come and they hadn't checked my temperature and hadn't taken me in, I mean, that was just sort of, I was given this sort of reprieve, like this, 15-hour, 10-hour reprieve. It wasn't even that much. It was maybe a 4 hour reprieve, excuse me, as I was back home before I went back into the hospital. But the doctor said, you would have died, not could have died, would have died. The infection had gotten so bad in my kidneys that it had got into my blood and I became septic. So now I'm realizing now I could have died. But you don't just think that. I live by myself. No one would have known that I had died. And that's a really kind of depressing place to be. I don't feel alone or lonely, so don't misunderstand. I just felt scared and the awareness that if something happened to me, no one would know. And I started thinking, like, maybe my son or my daughter would send me a text and I wouldn't respond. Well, that's not abnormal. I mean, I try to respond, but maybe they would have waited a day or two. Maybe my work would have wondered where I was and texted me, and maybe not. I'd like to think they would have followed up again, but maybe not till the next day. How long would I have laid on my floor dead? I'm a hospice nurse. I know death. The reality of that became very clear to me. So, going back, my son brings me back. The doctor tells me this. I'm in the hospital for several days. I take these antibiotics. I get home. Sepsis is wearing off. I have this day where I feel good and I'm going into the office. I got dressed up. I felt good. I mean, I really felt good. And then all of a sudden, I got this pain up my back, the left side. Oh my gosh, it was the worst pain I'd ever experienced. It was horrible. And I tried to manage it. I took some Tylenol, still getting ready for work, had a smoothie, trying to deal with it. But it was so debilitating that I was leaning over in pain. It sounds dramatic, but it was dramatic. I'm not trying to add to this. This really was what was happening. I got in my car and instead of driving to work, I drove to the emergency room. I parked in the parking lot. I walked across the street. Before I got to the end of the street, I passed out on the ground. The security guards came over and got me, brought me into the ER. Short story is, it turned out that I had an 8 millimeter kidney stone that had dropped down and lodged in my ureter. Behind it was a 6 or 7, I can't remember now, 6 or 7 millimeter one that was waiting to come and join it. I was in the hospital all day on pain meds and anti-nausea because the pain meds made me sick, and then I got a fever again. I mean, it was this vicious cycle all over again. And meanwhile, the bacterial culture kept growing and it kept being a different kind. And so they kept trying to find another antibiotic. So at this time now, by this point, I had been on, I think, 4 antibiotics. That night I had surgery in the OR. They put in a stent to open up my ureter so that I could pee properly and no more bacteria would build out. It would be healthier for my body. And I had to just kind of wait it out. They couldn't remove the stones until the bacteria was gone. Okay, it's now 55 days. In this amount of time, I've been in the ER 3 times. I've had a hospital stay. I've been on 7 antibiotics with 6 different bacterial infections. I've had sepsis. I've had the kidney stones. I've lost 12 or 13 pounds. I've lost my taste for food. I have moments of confusion. It's all been a little bit emotional and scary. And I don't know how to ask for help. And so I had to learn how to do that. I truly believed that asking for help meant that you were weak. I'm not weak. I'm one of the strongest people I know. Why couldn't I ask for help? I didn't understand that. The people that offered help surprised me. People showed up that surprised me. And then they would say, "Why don't you let us help you?" I didn't know how. This is a learned thing for me. They became my lighthouses. And I was so lucky to have them. And my work, if you have never heard of George Mart Children's House, please look them up. They are the most wonderful place. And they treated me so well. And they took care of me and they supported me and they allowed me to do my work from home, which most of my work had become from home, so that was okay, but they didn't make me feel guilty. They didn't punish me. They didn't hold things up against me and say, if you don't do this, you can't do this. There was none of that. It was, what do you need and how can we support you? When you are gifted that type of support, you are more likely to lean into the care that your body needs. When you don't get it, you don't take as well care of yourself as you should. I'm guilty of that. I've done that my whole life. I've been so worried about what other people thought and so afraid of making someone upset that I didn't take as good care of myself as I should have for many years. On Friday, I had my surgery, which I was looking very excited looking very forward to and very excited. They were going to remove the stent and clean everything out and break down the stones and clean me all out and then put another stent back in. The surgery was a little longer than I thought. I thought I was going to go in and out 15 minutes, no big deal. It doesn't work that way. When I had gone in for the first surgery, when they put the first stent in, I was on a lot of pain meds. So when they wheeled me to the OR, I was kind of like, yeah, do whatever you got to do. I'm totally fine, right? This is easy. But this time I was completely clear-headed. And when they wheeled me into the OR and all the machines and all the people and all the stuff, and they spread your arms out and they start doing all this stuff and they're getting ready, right? And then they put this big oxygen thing. Well, I panicked. I had a bit of a panic attack and my heart started racing and I got scared. And they were so nice to me. They they just said, "Hey, it's okay. Just breathe. Would you like a little something to relax?" And I said, "Yes, please." They gave me a little something to relax. I felt a little better. They put the oxygen on, and the next thing I knew, I woke up in the recovery room. This was Friday. It is now Tuesday. And I've been really uncomfortable. I've been on completely bedridden because this particular stent is not surgically implanted. It's a loose one with a string that pulls out and is taped to my leg, right? So any movement or activity could, we don't want it to come out. And it's also really uncomfortable. I don't take pain meds. My idea of a pain med is Tylenol. I don't like my head to not be clear. But I've been taking pain meds every day for this because the pain has been so bad. My best friend is my heating pad. Have this heating, it's on me right now. I love the heating pad. It's the only thing that has brought me comfort. And I have been able to, with the pain meds and the heating pad, at least get through this, but I'm bleeding all the time and it hurts anytime I go to the bathroom. Probably TMI, but I've told you so much already. We're best friends now, so it's okay. And I've been really depressed, and yet still my lighthouses show up for me. My work has been amazing. My family has been amazing. My friends have been amazing. And I'm weak and I am still a little scared, but I'm super optimistic and hopeful. Tomorrow, I go in to have this stent removed. Now, part of me is thinking, this is it. This is the end. It's done. 56 days and I'm going to be better. But actually, I know that's not true because now I have to heal. I have to go through this healing process. I have to get my body stronger and I have to take care of myself in a way that I'm not used to. But because of all this time that I've had, I have learned to ask for help and I have succumbed to bed rest. I am doing all the right things. My work, again, shout out to George Mark Children's House. I love you so much. Um, because they're letting me work from home, I can work. And I've been taking a class. I've been taking this great pediatric palliative care class, which is going to add to what I can do as a nurse. I wrote another book, and it's the most beautiful book I've ever written. And I'm not telling you any more than that because it's a secret, but it filled my soul and it allowed me to go to this new place within that I didn't know was there. And I've been trying to take care of myself, but I'm weak, super weak. I need to eat and take care of myself and do all the right things, which I'm going to do. But I will tell you again, I have witnessed almost 2,000 last breaths. I've seen a lot of death. I know what death looks like. I've also experienced a lot of grief, personal and professional. I've witnessed so many people say goodbye, and all I could think of this whole time was, I don't want to say goodbye. I'm not ready to go yet. And when someone looks you in the eyes and said, Gabby, if you hadn't called 911, you would have died. The reality of that is so big within me. And I'm not going to die. And I'm grateful. But there's been a lot of things that have happened in this process that's going to make me a better nurse. And I think one of the biggest lessons was when I was in the hospital. These are minor things, but if you know, you know. I remember one day I asked the nurse if I could have another pillow because they don't give you nice pillows in the hospital. And she said, you know what? I'll give you two. And I said, thanks. 4 hours later, she brought me the pillow and she said, I'm so sorry. And she was sorry. And they're short staffed, right? Because everywhere is short staffed relative to nursing. And and I was upset because all I wanted was an extra pillow. And I didn't make her feel bad. But 4 hours is a really long time to wait for something that you were told would be brought to you in 15 minutes. When you're lying in a bed and someone says, I'll be right back, you believe that. That is a promise you can't make and shouldn't make to someone who is lying in that bed feeling fragile and vulnerable and afraid. Time takes on a whole new meaning when you have less of it left, or when you're feeling like your time is fragile. And if you make a promise to someone and you say, I'll be there at a certain time, you have to either be there or don't make that promise. And when you're lying in this bed and you're trying to get to sleep, which is really uncomfortable to do when you've got IVs in both arms and every machine is beeping and you're scared, right? And it's not comfortable to sleep in there and everything's making noise and they keep coming in every 2 hours and oh, it's so frustrating. And I remember one morning I was lying in the bed. It was about 5:30 and I had just gotten into this cozy place and the blood draw guy comes in and he kind of moves my shoulder. He goes, "Okay, time for blood draw." And I'm shaking, right? And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I just wanted to look at him and say, "Get out of here." But what I wanted to say was, "I am a human being. I'm a human being and I'm scared. Why are you treating me like this?" They had to, that's their job. But you can do that job with a little more compassion and kindness. And don't get me wrong, they were kind and they were compassionate and they treated me well. And I went through all of this through Kaiser and they did a great job. I got excellent care. but I'm a human being. It doesn't matter that I'm a nurse. It doesn't matter that I'm a hospice nurse. It doesn't matter that I have a lot of experience. When someone is lying in that bed, our job, whether we're there professionally or personally, is to say, I'm here. I've got you. What do you need? We need to be able to elevate our voice in such a way that someone hears us. When someone is declining from age or illness, our autonomy is taken from us, right? Everyone's telling you what to do, when to do it, how to be, how to feel. I want to be the kind of nurse, I want to be the kind of human being that turns the volume up on someone else's voice when they are going through this. So tomorrow I go and I have the next stent removed, and that is a good move towards healing, right? And I've got a lot more time that I have to take to take care of myself. But am I going to be a better nurse because of this? Yes. Am I going to encourage people to ask for help? Yes. Asking for help is not a weakness. Asking for help is human. If you aren't feeling good, if something doesn't feel right, you have to trust your body. It knows what to do. It gives us the signs. That night when I was working and I was having a headache and I was having a backache, my body was giving me a sign. I always tell families to trust their person's body. The body knows what to do. The body knows how to die, right? The body knows how to die. It knows how to let go. It knows what to do. And we have to trust that. Well, the body also knows how to live. And it also knows when it wants to live. And so it gives us these signs. And we have to listen. So if something doesn't feel right and you're just feeling off, find out why. Talk to a neighbor, talk to a friend, reach out to your family. I think I need to go to the doctor. I need to figure out what's going on. And if that doctor is too busy because your 10-minute slot that he's given you has been narrowed to 8 because he was late and he has to hurry up onto the next appointment, you stop and you say, no, it's my turn now. I'm scared and I need your help. Please do not walk out this door until I feel like I've been heard. Why do we apologize because they're running late? I'm sick. I don't feel good. I don't want to be doing this right now. Tell me what I need to do. Let's get some tests. Let's figure this out. So I don't feel good. My throat is sore from the breathing tube. I have a fat lip. I've lost a lot of weight. I can't do much without getting short-winded, and I'm in so much pain. But I'm alive. I'm alive. And I'm going to do it better. And I think we all should. I think we have to build community at a time when there's so much going on in this world that sort of blocks that opportunity. We are a community. Give a sign to your neighbor. If my porch light isn't on by 10 o'clock, please come check on me. To your family, if I don't respond in 24 hours, find out why. To your work, make sure they have your backup numbers or your family's numbers so they can call for help. And if you need help, ask for it. You deserve that. I deserved that. It took me 55 days to realize that I've kind of been doing this wrong the whole time. I don't have to be super strong and stoic or brave. I'm allowed to be vulnerable and weak and afraid. It's okay. I'm allowed to admit that I can't do something on my own. And you are too, because you're not alone. Now, I can't come to your home and show up and help you, but I want you to know that my whole heart holds space for you. And I know that there is someone out there that's doing the same. I was so surprised by the unlikely lighthouses that showed up at my door. I survived this 55 days because of the people that have showed up for me. My family, my friends, my work, my Hospice Heart community. The Hospice Heart community, if any of you know what it is, there's almost 170,000 people there who are virtually strangers but have become friends. Not just to me, but to the others there. I see how they support one another. That's the kind of people we should be. We should be the kind of people that reach out, that show up, that hold space, that listen, but most of all, that give everyone else a safe place to be vulnerable without being embarrassed. That's our job. That's what's going to make this world a better place at a time when there's so much chaos and crisis. Let's show up for each other. I'm tired and I'm weak, but I'm alive. And I'm really, really grateful for that. So that's my story. That was a long-winded story, and tomorrow's the beginning to healing, and I believe that. I'm going to hand it back to Susan. Susan, that might have been a little longer than you expected, but that's the story.
Gabby, so much of what you're saying, it just the things that really resonated with me, in addition to all of these other things that Gabby does. Gabby is also one of our facilitators at my day job, which is the Humane Prison Hospice Project, where we go into incarceral settings and prisons in California and soon Michigan, Washington, and Oregon. And we train people who are incarcerated. Most of them are there for murdering somebody or multiple somebodies, who have done a lot of work on themselves and, as a living amends to their victims, want to be at the bedside caring for people as they age, as they experience cognitive decline and dementia in prison, and as they're dying in prison. And we just finished a 2-week training at the largest women's prison in California. And this idea of asking for help, in a place where you're so vulnerable. Like this was an ongoing theme of our conversation. The women there, many of them have been abused in ways that it's hard to wrap your mind around prior to their crimes. And the idea that they are worthy of asking for help and that help could show up for them, is remarkable. But the other thing that really struck a chord with many of them is that they were so willing to be generous to the peers that are in these situations and aging and dying in prison. Gabby comes in and facilitates with us. Of course, she wasn't there the last couple of weeks, but the women got to the point where they understood that by being a caregiver, they're being so generous to other people, but by not allowing people to care for them, they're kind of cutting them off at the knees. They're not receiving. And like this idea that like giving and receiving are the same thing. Um, Most people that are caregivers, nurses in particular, have such a difficult time accepting support or feeling like they're worthy of it because their role is just to give and give and give. And the kinds of things that you said, Gabby, like, um, how many people, like at the beginning, you were saying like you were really just almost apologetic for showing up at the hospital, like, oh, other people need help more than I do. Like, I'm so, and this idea that we are not worthy of help when we desperately need it, which I don't think is just a thing with nurses. I think many of us, particularly, I would say particularly women, well, even harder for men to ask for help, but women who tend to be caregiver types of folks, it's very difficult to understand that not only are we worthy of help and support when we need it, but by not allowing people to do that, we are not being generous with them because I can speak for myself. Caregiving for my friends when they were dying was one of the most generous acts that anybody has ever given to me, to be able to be there for them. And I see myself often pushing back, about like, oh no, I don't need anything. I also live alone, so that really resonated with me, Gabby. This idea that you could be dead for days and nobody would know about that. And I've come to sort of, I try to talk to my brother and his wife who are in LA about like, don't worry if that happens, because really that's not your fault. But, they feel very badly about that. But I also, this idea of so many things were happening in your body and you're so attentive to other people's bodies. When they were going on in your own body, you're like, oh, it's okay, I'll get through this. Like, which would have crippled most people. Like they would have been flat down on the floor. But you're just like, I'm just going to do my, I'm going to do my Zoom, and then I'm going to go do this. And then I'll just walk over to the hospital, and then I'm going to pass out on the ground, but I'm just going to walk home. Like if anybody was telling you that story as a nurse, you'd be like, but like, this is something that happens. And I would imagine that for many women who are either widowed or have lived on their own for many, many years, this is also kind of where we're coming from. And we would do anything for our neighbor or our friend, but it's so hard. And I'm saying that because I'm hopeful that one of the outcomes of this conversation is that people will just be more willing to ask for help and support. And often it comes, as you also mentioned, from the most unlikely places. One of the other things I'm curious about, Gabby, is you are such a wonderful nurse to begin with, but I'm so curious how this experience has informed how you will be a nurse going forward. What was the most surprising thing in terms of being a receiver of healthcare? What was the most challenging thing? And what's something that was kind of a lifelong learning that you will take with you to every patient that you are with going forward, or every family member that you're with?
That's a great question. You know, in my teaching, when I'm presenting in classes and supporting clinicians or doulas or caregivers or anyone who is providing care, I think people get so fixated on, vital signs and diagnosis and those typical things, right? And they forget to see the whole human. And they maybe are unaware of the power of presence. I think we have to slow down and we have to really sit with that person and assess the whole human, not just the numbers on the beeping machine, but the way their eyes look and show fear. Maybe the facial movements that show pain, maybe understanding the difference of pain, right? The difference between physical pain and emotional pain, because they are both valid. And to really, I think we have to slow down and really be with that person. And again, like I said, turn the volume up on their voice. Let them be heard. Give them a platform to speak and don't minimize them. The one of the things that we have to all get better at, myself included, and I experienced this a lot during this. I can't tell you how many times, and I posted my story on Facebook. I was very transparent about a lot of what I'm more transparent with each of you today than I was on Facebook, but I did share my story. But one of the things that I received a lot of was other people telling me their story. Oh, this happened to me too. And oh, I got this and this happened to me. Oh, I know exactly how you feel. When someone says to you, I know exactly how you feel, it minimizes how you feel. For me, it made me not want to tell them anymore. Oh, gee, I'm so sorry you experienced that. Here, let me stop everything and hear your story. And I know that sounds a little sarcastic and maybe even snotty, but that's really how I felt because I was feeling horrible. Who are we to show up at someone else's bedside and tell them that we know how they feel? And I've taught this in my classes. And a lot of the things that I've taken from this experience are the things that I bring to my own work and that in my teaching, but it is all of it is important. It's about remembering that that is a human being, that we are human beings. It's slowing down. Right now, healthcare has become this productivity versus compassion, right? It's that we got to see six patients in this amount of time. You got to do all of this in this amount of time. And then, all of this needs to be done. And don't forget to chart. Yeah, but did anyone ask how this person feels? Do they have someone to support them? Are they afraid? Are they alone? Why are we minimizing the human response to decline or pain or situations that cause us fear? I think we have to slow down and meet people where they're at, not where we think they should be, certainly not to tell them how they should be experiencing what they're going through in any situation. I will be a better nurse because I am going to take better care of myself. We can't pour from an empty cup. I'm going to listen to my body because I know it speaks to me. And I'm going to show up for people in the way that they deserve, but mostly to sort of elevate their voice. I don't want anyone in my care to ever not feel seen. And I think we have to do better at that. And we're fighting a new type of healthcare, right? But that doesn't mean they have to win. We can see this many patients. Yeah, you want us to see this many patients? Sure. But you know what? I'm not walking out their door until I know they feel supported. You can't take that from me. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the person in our care, whether we're providing this care professionally or personally, that no one feels minimized or dismissed, or that their volume was turned down, or that they're being, maybe dismissing how they feel, minimizing it. That makes them not want to tell you. All that does is mean the next time they're not going to call 911. They're not going to call their doctor. They're not going to tell someone they're struggling because of the reaction they received the time they did before. So if I'm going to do anything differently, it's just going to elevate what I'm already doing, which is making sure that every human is cared for well and supported and heard, and that clinicians doing this work have the tools that they need and deserve to do this work with confidence, so that fear is removed, uncertainty is removed, and people feel like they can go through this feeling a little more safe and secure in the hands of others. I think our job is to make sure that other people feel held, and that's not a big ask.
There's a lot of comments here, and one that I was responding to, but I think I would rather have this responded to here. Joy, thank you so much for sharing that, and I think you really hit a nail on the head. Joy commented here that her husband's oncologist did not have the skill set or the tools to have a conversation with her about the trajectory of his illness, which is that he was going to die from it. And this idea that doctors need to sort of compartmentalize, or medical professionals need to sort of, you know, have a way of not feeling their feelings. And what we actually do in prison is we teach the opposite of that. We offer tools and skillful ways of recognizing that these emotions are a part of our humanity, and offer tools so that people can navigate through very difficult situations of death, dying, loss, and grief. And I'm just curious about what you would have to say. And then we come back to Jesse's. I like what Jesse's comment says here. But I'm curious what you would say about medical providers have to emotionally protect themselves from being affected by the need to be human. Because I feel like that's such a moral conflict. People go into these kinds of professions, some for money, but many because they really believe in helping or being of service, or helping or fixing people, which may be the wrong approach. We talk about not helping or fixing, we talk about being of service. And I'm wondering if you might want to just say something about this.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I don't want to offend any medical professionals, but
No.
I do feel for the most part, especially in the hospital settings, most doctors especially, they're there to fix
Hmm.
and cure and heal. And and so they're not going to talk to you about death and dying because they don't want you to go there quite yet.
Hmm.
The thing is, though, is that if we did that, if we had these conversations, it would prepare people so that they would know not just what to expect or what to look for, but also to be able to let others know what they might need in these situations. Talking about death and dying is not going to make it happen faster any more than not talking about it is going to slow it down. We should have this conversation in healthcare all the time. I think patients need to know, like, okay, you've got this is what we're going to do. Where are you at now? I've had multiple people tell me that they told their doctor they were done. Can you please put me on hospice? And their response was, "Oh, you're not ready for that right now." Well, you're not the boss of me. I am ready for it right now because I feel like I'm dying. And why do we say, "Oh, okay, then I won't do this"? I think doctors need to meet their patients where they're at and give them the tools to prepare for whatever might or might not happen so that they can make a choice that truly honors their wishes. And I think that there are many doctors who come from a very compassionate humanistic side. The surgeon, he was so nice to me when he came up to see me before my surgery on Friday. He had his mask on, and so I wasn't sure who it was, and I hadn't met him before. I only met him on Zoom. And so I looked at him and he started talking to me, right? He sat down next to me on the chair. He pulled up the computer. He's reading things off the computer. He's talking to me as though he's talking to the computer. And I said, "Excuse me, are you Dr. Cho?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, yes, I'm sorry." He took off his mask and he goes, "I'm Dr. Cho. I'm going to be doing your surgery." That was a big moment for me because If I hadn't said that, he would have kept looking at the computer, telling me the facts, the protocols, everything that was going to happen, have me sign a paper and meet me in the OR. But for that tiny minute, he was human and I was human. And we had this interaction that made me say, okay, you're the person that's going to, do this for me. It's nice to meet you. Thank you. I think people forget, nurses forget, caregivers forget. It's easy to go about your job, right? It's easy to make it not personal, to kind of block emotion. But the truth is, having a little emotion, we can't, we have to have some decorum. We can't throw ourselves uncontrollably over their bed in fits of tears, right? We have to have some decorum. But we can have a balance between professionalism and
Mm.
humanism, wrapping our professionalism with compassion. We're allowed to do that. It doesn't make you a less than person. It doesn't make you a less than a human, of course, but also professional. I would much rather have my doctor look me in the eye and say, I'm really sorry this is happening to you, you know? And I can't change the outcome, but here's some tools that might be helpful. Or would you like me to have you talk to someone? I mean, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Let's do this with a little more kindness. And the other thing that I don't think people realize is that when you're working in healthcare and someone is declining and you're witnessing this for however long you have to be with them and they die, it is your loss too. I am not immune to grief when my clients or my patients or the people I care for, the families are struggling. That's my loss too, because it's a human loss. And so I'm allowed to have something. I have a whole grief process that I work through anytime one of my clients or patients die, because I need to honor them. I say their name out loud and I recognize the difficulties that the family went through and I think about the lessons that I learned. We have to find balance in healthcare. We can do this work really professionally, follow protocols and guidelines while acknowledging that the person in our care, whether it's 15 minutes, a few hours, a surgery, a treatment, or a follow-up, that's a human being. If we do that, people will feel more seen and supported. And I think that's how we can do things differently and better.
Thank you so much. There's two things that really are resonating with what you're saying right this minute. And one, because I mentioned my brother from another mother, Charlie, earlier. This is the 35th anniversary of his death. And I'll never forget about 2 days before he died, um, walking into his room. He was in the AIDS unit at San Francisco General, which had an internationally known reputation as being a good place, as good as any place could be in those days to die of AIDS. And there was a phlebotomist there trying to draw blood. And he was just stabbing him in his arm, and then he couldn't get any blood, and then he moved to his leg, into his thigh, into his. And I walked into the room, and I'm from New York, so very raw. And I just said to that man, I was like, I screamed at him, like, just get the. Well, I said some bad words, out of here, like. And before you leave, I want you to raise your eyes from the needle that you're jabbing into this human being and look at his eyes, because his eyes were just pouring tears, just pouring tears. And that story, years later, I heard Ram Dass say something that was very profound. And he did not say this until after he had a very severe stroke and had to relearn how to speak, how to do. He could never walk again, how to be dependent. And he said, I could never move from my role to my soul. And that was the experience he had with so many medical professionals that were treating him. They were experts at something which allowed almost no space for the unknown or for the humanity of it, because they knew what they needed to do. They knew what was going to happen. There's a question here that somebody asked about, instead of saying, I know how you feel, what would you have rather heard? And before you address that, I just want to say Jacqueline Marie posted that she recommends the Snug app, which I will look up immediately, because this sounds
I
like.
have that too.
Yeah. So for years, I told friends, I'm going to develop an app and it's going to be called I'm Still Alive, where people would log in and they would be located within a certain distance of other people. And at a certain time in the morning and a certain time in the evening, they would check in and say, just push a button that says I'm alive. And if they didn't, people in that area would contact them or contact a loved one so that people could do a safety check or check in on them. So I'm very grateful to see that this exists and I don't have to think about it again. And yes, agreed, Barbara, that caregivers create a holding space and a safe environment for others, and you also need to be held. And there's a recommendation for a book that I will also include as the resources, this is Being Mortal. Oh yeah, Being Mortal by Atul. Yeah, that's an excellent book. And it's a story of a doctor's journey with his father's illness. And there's some other resources. But yeah, what would you have rather heard than I know what you're going through?
That's a great question. I've actually tried to think of what my response would. I mean, I don't tell people what that feels like because I don't want to make them feel bad. Another problem of mine, but I'm working on it. I think when someone is telling you that they're scared or they've had something going on, I'll give a good example. And this might answer this question. When my brother After my brother died, I had taken some time off. I was at his bedside for 18 days. We hadn't talked in a long time. And so we had some disconnects. So when I was at his bedside while he was dying, and he was non-responsive. So I spent a lot of time offering forgiveness and just apologizing for wasted time, etc. And when he died, uh, I was, of course, brokenhearted. And I went back to work about 2 weeks later, and my very first patient, I walked into the room. There's this young man lying in a bed, and he was clearly dying, probably my brother's age. And a woman was sitting at the bedside crying, and I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm your nurse." And she looked up at me and she said, "How do I tell my brother goodbye?" And I thought, really, that's going to be my first person that I'm seeing, right? There was a moment where I could have sat down and said, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel. I just said goodbye to my brother," right? This was that moment where I totally related to her. I knew exactly how she was feeling, or I thought that I did. But I was reminded of my own advice, which is not to say that. So instead, what I said was, you know what? Trust that he hears you. Say everything that you need to say because I truly believe that's what he's going to take with him. But I had to make a conscious effort not to share what I had experienced 2 weeks before. And I think that when someone is going through something and they're telling you about it, or they're sharing it even on social media, our response could be not, "Oh, and I had this, and so I know exactly how you're feeling. Well, maybe I've been in a similar situation. If you ever want to talk about it, let me know. There's some things that worked for me. They might help. If you're interested, let me know." But when we start off with, "I know how you feel," that turns my voice down. That makes me not want to communicate. That means you're comparing your situation to mine, and as silly as it might sound, it feels like you're minimizing what I'm going through, and I don't want to talk about it with you. Now, I'm not speaking for everyone else. Maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I think that when someone is being very vulnerable with how they're feeling, whether it's in private, in a letter, on social media, whatever, just show up. Just say, "Wow, I'm really sorry you're going through that. I did have a similar situation. I'm not going to tell you about it right now, but if you ever want to talk about it, I'd be happy to share my experience." Or just let it go. Maybe you could just say, "Is there anything you need?" Or not do it publicly on social media. Maybe write a private little note, say, "Hey, I went through something similar. Watermelon was my best source of nourishment." I don't know, whatever. And say, give it a try. But now, knowing everything that I know and everything that I went through, I am not going to compare my story to someone else's, but I am going to sympathize with them in a different way. I'm going to meet them where they're at. If they're interested, I might share some things that worked for me, but I am never going to tell them I know how they feel because I don't.
Yeah, people are posting some of the things that might be more supportive than "I know how you feel," which is so reflexive. It's, kind of what we're trained to do in this thought of like being uniting, but in fact, it's really dismissive because nobody knows how another person feels. Somebody who said, "I'd like to hear that sounds very hard. Thank you for trusting me enough to share that."
Yes.
or tell me what is there anything that you need right in this moment, or how are you navigating this? Uh, that gives people the opportunity to share what works for them in that situation. And yes,
All of
that's
those are
true.
good.
Yeah, what you're saying here about it does turn this to be about them. And I know how you feel is a very different thing. Um, Gabby, I'm kind of curious. There's a couple of people that had their hands up, and I think that just from fatigue, they probably put them down. The folks that had their hands up, if Gabby answered your question, no need to raise it, but I just would, if you would like to raise your hand again, please do. And I'm happy to, thank you. Denise, why don't you, if you could, I was going to say, are you able to put your video on? And if not, that's fine. But please do unmute yourself, and then we'll go to Jackie Marie.
Okay. I I is it my turn?
Yes, please, Denise.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you, Gabby, for your experience. I'm sorry that you went through all of this. Um, Thank you for being a voice for people that I'm not in your situation, but I'm a quadriplegic that can only use one hand
Mhm.
and arm, and sometimes I don't feel listened to. So thank you for what you tell people, and perhaps we can change the narrative.
I hear you, Denise, loud and clear. Yes, together we will change the narrative. Let's do this.
Okay. And can I say something? Um, I was on a call with Barbara Carnes like 3 or 4 years ago, and she wanted me to talk to hospice people, hospice staff, but I didn't really know how to do that really quickly in terms of, you know, what it's like to be on the side of the person receiving care. And I just wrote her the other day and said, "Will you help me figure this out?" So I've heard really good things about you because I took David Kessler's um um grief educator class, so everybody knows about you. And so I'm gonna do my best to change the narrative, but I think coming from you and seeing it from both sides, and I and only you can know what you went through, but I've been through something similar and it's very, very difficult. So my thoughts and prayers are with you.
And mine are with you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, Denise. And we're hopeful that Barbara will be joining us in the first part of 2026. So you'll get emails about that and you'll be able to join again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Jackie Marie, I'm wondering if you
Oh,
can.
aloha kakahiaka. Good morning from Hawaii. Uh,
Good
I
morning.
I don't personally use the Snug app because I've set up my own system and I have people check on me every day, and
Mhm.
uh, and I like that because some of them are my neighbors and they all have my contact information and my healthcare agent, and I like the personal interaction. But I do end of life coaching, and um, I've been trained as a death doula, but I don't do that work. I do more end of life planning. So I always encourage, and I had two people recently who died and were on the floor for 2 to 4 days. So this is a special issue for me, for everyone who lives alone. They need to have people, they need to be checking on every 24 hours. The longest I'm going to be on the floor is 24 hours. So I just want to support everyone who lives alone to either set up their own system, which is kind of hard to do. Maybe it's easier just to use the Snug app. So thank you for letting me say my piece, and thank you for all that you do. Aloha. We say ahui ho malama pono. It means see you later and please take care.
Thank you.
Hello. Um, I was a hospice volunteer coordinator for a long time, and we got a call one day from two women that in their words, were fired from a hospice that Gabby and I eventually ended up working for together. But they wanted to come to this hospice that I was at. And I was talking to them a little bit on the phone. They shared with me that they were that we should have an interview soon because one was 85 and the other was 90. So these two women came in and worked in our office. The 85-year-old was there for 5 years. The one that was 90 worked till she was 102. Sharp as a tack. But the woman that was came in at 85, Jeannie, she told us that she has kids. One of her sons lived across the street. She had neighbors that she had lived on the same street for over 50 years. And she had a routine, and she told all of her neighbors, every morning I wake up and come outside and get the paper that's on my front step. And when I do that, I open up my front windows. So if there's ever a morning and it's after 7:30 and my paper's on the front step and my window is not up, you need to call 911 and have them come and get me, which is exactly what happened. She died in her sleep. And one morning, 3 of the neighbors woke up and they all went over to her house and knocked on the door because her paper was not gone and her window was not open. And they called and she died in her sleep, which was exactly what she wanted to do. But because she knew and she had told the people around her kind of what her plan was, they were able to find her within a couple of hours of her death. And I think about that often, like living alone in a building where like I could be like, it could be weeks before somebody's like, oh, wait, yeah, maybe, no, that's weird. Where's Susan? So I really appreciate these kinds of ways of engaging people. And they don't even necessarily have to be friends. Like Jenny's daughter-in-law wasn't the first person that noticed her window wasn't up. It was her neighbors. So they were acquaintances, but not her good friends. And I think, putting together these types of networks, particularly for people who live alone, is a really, really brilliant idea. Jesse, would you like to go ahead and talk with Gabby here?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this. And I'm sorry I missed the first part of the session, but I don't know what you went through. And I keep finding myself witnessing through my own personal health journey, those of my family and professionally, because working in healthcare, I'm a nurse, but we're more than whatever hat and hyphen we have. I keep realizing the wealth of experience in the healthcare workforce and this crystal ball we bring to the table of not knowing, but we're good guessers and we can be good predictors and good accompaniment on that health journey. And even as a nurse, you found yourself facing that compassion fatigue or the whatever it is that's getting us all so jaded that we don't get to show that caring part of us that signed up in the first place. And I've had a lot of experiences recently where it's like getting mirrored at me of I know I can see what this is like for you personally and professionally and all that. And what I keep coming back to is the lack of direction and support for patients when they're not pregnant and having a baby or officially dying or near the end of life, and this muddy middle of here's your Alzheimer's diagnosis. Could have 10 more years with that one, or here's your infection, your whatever this hopefully short-term problem is. And it could go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're done, and soon it'll be a distant memory, or it can, and we have these like tangents of possibilities. And I keep coming back to the role of a doula. And I had taken one of your courses, and I love the doula toolkit book. What a dream. You took the tools and your wisdom and you said, well, I can't be the only one who has this. Here it is. It's cheap, it's accessible, it's practical. So my comment and my question, comment first, thank you for not keeping that to yourself. You could have been like, this is mine, it's proprietary and only members only. but you gave us a gift of sharing so much of yourself already. And now, from this part of your journey, what is the role of a doula in this? What is the role of that non-clinical? I'm not your nurse, I'm not your doctor, I'm not your therapist, but I thought of this like, is it a doula of dysfunction, of a new diagnosis, of this? You need a care partner for you and your person, your spouse, your whoever. And I just don't know what to do with that gap that I feel like I'm staring into. So I guess I'm just interested in your thoughts on that, having come through what you're coming through.
First of all, I love your hat. Uh, and I remember you. So nice to see you again. Interestingly enough, when I was in the hospital, I kept thinking if a doula was here, that would soften everything. I go back to the days of candy stripers, right? Candy stripers would get you a new blanket. Candy stripers would get you a straw. I mean, a new pillow, right? Couldn't doulas do that? Well, also sitting at the bedside and maybe just checking in. Is there music you want to hear? Doulas are non-clinical, but we're very aware of what's happening in a clinical setting. The whole time I kept thinking, I need a doula here. And,
Yeah.
and that would have just made things so much easier. It would have taken time from the clinicians, they have to do their stuff. And it would have been a more personalized service.
Yeah.
And maybe it means we go back to the days of candy stripers. I remember having my water, right? And it comes in this big pitcher. And I asked for a straw. Well, now they make straws that are made out of paper and they literally melt in the water and you can't even drink out of them. So I asked for another straw. I never got the new straw. So I started just drinking it out of the pitcher. But the point being is that wouldn't have been a big ask, right? But also, like a doula could check if I was comfortable, if I wanted, some new socks, if I needed maybe to fix my hair a little bit or get my nails painted or maybe just giving me a straw or yes, right? Anything like or maybe run home and grab a few things from my house that would make this stay a little more comfortable. A doula could personalize that. I kept thinking while I was in there, I wish there was somebody that was assigned just to me to make this a little more personal.
Yeah.
So yes, I support this idea. I don't know if it's a possibility because what does it come down to? Money. It would mean a hospice volunteer. That's who would come. And that's not what I need. I
And
need
that's what
someone
I keep
who,
coming
yeah,
back to is the cost.
it's
If
the
anything
money.
has to get billed to insurance, then it's not sustainable. And if it doesn't get billed to insurance, then you're paying somebody and I think where I am coming up is this untapped resource is those entering and leaving the workforce. The youth who are thinking about a career in healthcare, but I don't know, and those who are retired or stay-at-home parents or something to go, you're looking to serve and you're not sure what to do, that we have this gap and so many people that care tremendously. There's something, but
It's going to be hard because you can't just have volunteers. This is an insurance thing, right? There's a legal aspect to this, and I get that. But what if you could call on a doula? Hey, I'm in the hospital. I could really use your services. That could be a personal choice. They could come and be there and they can help you with the changes, pick up meds for you, that kind of thing. So there are definitely, that's for a whole nother conversation, but I am so on board with you.
oh,
I
thank
support
you so much.
everything you just said.
Oh,
Yeah.
so happy to see you
It's
bright.
nice to meet
Yes. Yeah. Gabby, listening to this conversation with you and Jesse, there is a pool of people who are coming out of carceral settings who are the most remarkable caregivers before doing the work with Humane Prison Hospice Project, I had the great fortune to train over 600 community-based hospice volunteers over almost 20 years of time. Well, meeting the incarcerated folks that do caregiving and attend to the needs of the patient, this is exactly the work they're doing. It's non-clinical. They are spiritual, emotional, social support They understand the incredible benefit of being of service to other human beings because, as many of them say, I ended up in prison because I took so much from someone else. And I can never make that up. But what I can do is move forward in this kind of a way of being of service to other people and give back. And they are barred from every kind of caregiving that you can imagine because they have a felon. And I would just like to posit that if we, each of us, is always remembered and accounted and have to account in our lives by the worst thing that we've ever done, that is just a terrible way to move through our life. And there are opportunities for people who have spent 20 or 30 years every single day of their life considering how can they be a better human being, which is something that, I'll be honest, I don't do that out here. I mean, very few people out here who have had the kind of introspection that people that we work with inside have had to have in order to live with what they've done and how they can move forward in the world in a positive way. And those are the people I want at my bedside when I'm dying, absolutely, without a doubt, because they are one-pointed in their focus. They are uniquely quiet, because if they can provide this type of care in a hellish environment, they can certainly do it at your bedside and almost anywhere else. And almost anywhere else would be a step up from the environment that they provide this care in. And I just, this gap of so much need for these types of like caregivers in the community and this group of people that can do that care that aren't allowed to. I just, one of my hopes is in my lifetime that gap can be minimized. There are chaplains too. This is a true thing in a hospital setting. Well, I would say that was true. And in many places now that is not true. In some healthcare settings, there are chaplains. And if you want a specific denomination, then you need to, they need to go outside of that. When I had my friend Ada die, she was 95. She died in a hospital, Kaiser Hospital in San Francisco. And I asked if they could get a chaplain at her bedside. And they said, no, you could go across the street to the church and see if the priest could come, but we don't have a chaplain that's available anymore. And I was shocked by that. That's not the case in all hospital systems, but many hospital systems, that's a role that no longer exists in the hospital system. It's somebody that you can get as a family from outside. And that is a role that is just incredibly important to have at the bedside. And also a chaplain is not going to be getting you a straw. Well, maybe, but they're not going to be going to get you a pillow or going to do those sorts of comfort things. They're there for, to be a spiritual support to you. And I'm glad that you're training to be a chaplain. And really, I hope that you also are able to speak to people, clinicians in particular, that are palliative care workers and doctors and nurses, because they are focusing like you are on the whole person and not necessarily, oh, this is a cancer in room 214, but this is a human being in room 214 that needs spiritual support. So thank you so much. Yes, perfect. Doula and a chaplain. Bingo. Anybody else have a question? I see we have about 7 minutes left. And I want to make sure that if there's anything that's come up for you or anything you'd like to ask Gabby or to share, that you have this opportunity now. And if you are shy and don't want to speak on the camera, you're welcome to put your question up in the chat. And while you're doing that, Gabby, I kind of just want to ask you a little bit, because you are doing some very unique work as an educator, nurse educator with, yes, we'll ask that next, Alice. But you're working with a very unique, a pediatric population and families who are managing care for their children, which I know like many people will be like, oh my God, hospice, even as a medical profession, that's the last thing in the world I want to do. Well, when you tack that onto the working with children or in prison, then that takes that just another step. And I just am curious, kind of your approach with the kids now. I just am wondering if anything is shifting or like you have ideas about, oh, I want to do this differently, or with the families, like I'd like to just do this one. If there's one thing that you could do differently with them, I'm curious.
I have the honor of working with such amazing people, and I was one of those nurses that would have never worked with children, not because I
Mhm.
don't like them, but because I think I had the bandwidth.
Yeah.
I went into nursing to be a hospice nurse. That was where I was going to do my
Yeah.
work. And I'm still doing some hospice and end of life work as a doula as well, and as an educator and a liaison. But my full-time job is working with the children who have a high acuity of life-limiting illnesses. And they actually teach me a lot about what we talk about here. When I see the child, I am learning that laughter doesn't always mean happy and tears don't always mean sad. And they come to us with no past of things that how life used to be or how it will never be. They're so right in the moment. They remind me to be in the moment. The clinicians and CNAs at George Mark provide incredibly beautiful care. And what we do there is truly 100% about meeting someone where they're at, not where you think they should be, both for the child and the family, including the siblings. And collectively, the group of people that I work with do this work so beautifully. And all of it is at no expense to the family. So what do I learn? I learn how to show up. And I learn that it doesn't matter what age you are, we all experience pain, physical, emotional, spiritual. I witness grief from all ages. I think it's very similar to everything we talked about today, which is about truly showing up for someone and making sure that no one feels alone. And that we don't do it according to what we think someone needs based on what we would need, that we really do meet them where they're at. And children are a good example of that because they don't have time for BS, right? They don't want to hear your long stories. They're not going to be sugar coated with anything. They're actually more factual. Like, this is how it is. This is what I want. This is what I need. And, and they, even when they can't speak, they speak volumes. So I think if I learn anything from them, it's about strength for sure, but also just the joy. That's what we do. Our role is to bring them joy in each day, despite their discomfort or whatever they're experiencing. And their parents are amazing and they're really lovely. And that's a whole nother conversation would be to talk about what I get to do there. And it's a beautiful place.
It sounds like a wonderful conversation for 2026 because,
Let's do
our
it.
focus has been so much around, adults and kids. I had the incredible privilege of supporting a children's group and a young adults group back in the 80s and 90s. And the young adults were all people between 13 and 20 that had a life-limiting illness, and the remarkable teachers they were. They just were incredible. I'm also going to post this. This is a link to Endwell, which is Gabby can talk to us about Endwell as well, because she is like me, usually there. This year, last month, my colleague Fernando Murillo, somebody asked in the chat if we had heard about a guy who was released from prison by the Governor Newsom. Yes, we know Fernando. Fernando is my colleague at Humane Prison Hospice Project. He joined us about 2.5 years ago. And he gave a remarkable talk in November. He was invited to be one of about 30 speakers at the Endwell Conference on Radical Bravery. And this link that I've just put up is for the whole day, which is about 8 hours. If you look at about 5 hours and 40 minutes or so, Fernando's talked from 2:55 to 3:15. And he spoke about the work he did as an incarcerated person. He went to prison at 16 and he was released by the governor at 40. And the remarkable work he did for his last 6 years of incarceration during the pandemic, serving at the bedside in the only licensed hospice in a prison in California, at the California Men's Facility, which is one of the 5 prisons that we work in. And his story is unlike any other story that anybody doing this work has. And it's absolutely worth the 15 minutes. And the whole rest of this day was all kinds of people coming. It's like this idea there's an elephant and everybody's touching a different part of the elephant, and this is their story. And it's all about death, dying, loss, and grief, and how people navigate that. And this year's theme was radical bravery. At the end of Fernando's talk, there was a complete and total silence in the room, and people were stunned. And then all 800 people jumped up and started clapping crazily, like they had never heard the story before. And there were people there that had worked in hospice for 30 and 40 years. So I highly recommend it. It sounds like it, God working with dying people in prison, how that must be terrible. It's not terrible. It's just a remarkable. And Gabby can attest to this as well. Gabby, can you tell us when you're doing more training? People are curious
Well,
about that.
if you go to my website, all my classes there. I do have some coming up in January. I haven't added for future yet, but I will soon. But you could always go to my website, which is thehospiceheart.net, and my classes are there. I also there's a whole podcast section of podcasts that I've done, and there's some great information there, which is all free. And yeah, I'm always teaching, or at least I try to be.
Thank you, Sally from the UK, for joining us, and thank you, Diane, and thank you. We're a little bit over, and I want to respect people's time. For those of you that came in a little bit late, just to know that this is being recorded, and when Ken Ross returns from his European Christmas, he will put this up online, and I will send an email to each of you. It will either come from Eventbrite if he gets back within 10 days, and if it's more than 10 days, it will come from my personal email, which is Sam B, and it will say Elisabeth Kübler-Ross Gabby. We'll keep all of these resources that have been discussed, and Gabby's website is one that you definitely want to check out. Lots of resources there, and her podcasts and talks are just remarkable. And so, Gabby, thank you so much on behalf of everybody at the Elisabeth Kübler-Ross Foundation. We hold you all in our hearts and minds during this holiday season, which is a struggle for so many people. And to all of those who are not with us this holiday season, we also hold them. And I'm just so grateful that on the anniversary of one of the dearest people in my life that we were able to have this conversation, Gabby, because I think of what dying of AIDS in the 90s was like, and just what we need to do to support people appropriately when they are ill and grieving. And you have just given us all some beautiful things to consider.
Thank you.
Much
Thank you,
healing.
everyone, for being here today.
Yes, 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 indeed. And yes, people are still dying of AIDS. Yes, they are absolutely in countries that do not have the resources that we have here. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you in January. And I will hopefully be sending out in the not too distant future some of our talks that are coming up, which are also wonderful. Gabby, thank you so much. Continued healing. And I'm going to stay on here for about 5 more minutes if anybody else just wants to do that. But then I do have to go. I have a meeting just in a little while. Thank you all. Take good care. Gabby, I hope that I hope you feel better. Every day, I hope you feel better and better and better.
I am going to go to my couch now.
Yes, indeed.
I have to take care of me.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
100%. Bye, Gabby. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Susan. Bye, you
Thank
guys.
you. Bye-bye.
Susan,
Yes. Hi, Denise.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to talk to somebody at Enwell to see if I can do a presentation and
Mm-hmm.
see what the criteria is, to see if I can, see if I even fit, kind of thing. And I would have to do it virtually because I can't fly. But who do I contact? Because when I filled out the response form, it said, do you have any suggestions or anything like that? And I put that I wanted to be a speaker, but no one has addressed that.
No, Denise, the sort of format for Endwell is in person, and they've moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and that might be a barrier. But there are also opportunities that people have. I think Shoshana, the woman who founded it, has podcasts that she does and speaks with people. And I'm just looking here. Let me see if I can find anybody, any
And
way to contact them.
would you be able to send it to me in my email if I gave it to you?
If you give it to me, I will do my best to do that. And I will just be honest with you that my brain cells are just fried. But hold on a second. I'm just finding the contact information here.
Okay.
So
Because
here,
because the guy that was the incarcerated guy that excuse me, I can't remember his name. It
Fernando.
was it was phenomenal. I was bawling my eyes out. I'm like, oh my God,
Yes.
how prolific can this guy be?
Yeah, I will share that. I will share that with him. Thank you so much because he is remarkable. His story is remarkable. And as he will tell
Oh,
you, um, his story is remarkable. And there are many other people living in prison with similar stories. And so often their stories are told by their attorneys, by judges, by other people. And so for somebody that's
exactly.
formerly incarcerated be able to tell their own story in their own words that's a remarkable situation. We
Yes.
work with almost 200 incarcerated people now in prisons in California, and all of them have a story that would make most of our eyeballs pop out and our heart break. So I'm really grateful that you got to listen to that. And thank you so much, Marilyn, my brother from another Charlie. It's so interesting, Denise, because Endwell, where it says contact us, it is a link that doesn't work. So let me think about other ways. I'm sure you have their website, yes?
Uh, y- yeah, I just know nwell.com or nwell.net or whatever. And
Angelo
I,
project here. I'm going to put this up and maybe they will fix this. But currently it's broken the link because I just tried to do this so that you could have it. This is their link to their contact information. And that link, if you click on it, is broken and nothing happens. So I'm hopeful that they'll fix that soon because that is not how it should work. But it might be if you can't attend Endwell as a speaker in person, which makes a lot of sense. I used to travel with a quadriplegic person, and that was a just absolutely phenomenal Herculean task on his part and my part. Um, that it might be you might have an opportunity to tell your story in other ways on the Endwell website.
okay. And let me see.
It's here, right here in the chat, and if you just click on that, it will take you to that endwellproject.org page.
Okay, but you said it's not working, but does the contact form work?
The contact click does not work, but the rest of the website is working. So there may be, I didn't poke around on it a lot because we're
Okay.
still here. So there may be opportunity or to just Google. I will tell you, Chat GPT has become my very best friend. And it's possible that you could put in there, how can I email somebody at the Endwell Project and see if they give you an email address? Because I've gotten email
Okay.
addresses in there that I have not been able to get any other way. So just,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you, Denise, and I hope your holiday is as good as it can be.
Yes,
And I
it will
hope
be.
that is the case for everyone. And I do have to wrap this up. I'm curious if anybody else would like to unmute. If there's anything you'd like to say before we go, this would be the opportunity to do that. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in 2026. Take good care, everybody. Thank you so much, Julie. Right back at you. We couldn't do this without you. So I'll see you in 2026. Bye bye.